Candler School of Theology is pleased to announce the launch of our new track on Womanist Discourse in our Doctor of Ministry program. As an institution, we are consistently striving to create well-rounded spiritual leaders equipped to serve in this consistently evolving. The Womanist Discourse track, led by Reverend Dr. Teresa Fry Brown, Dr. Musa Dube, Reverend Dr. Cleo Williams, and Reverend Dr. Nicole Phillips, provides space for scholars to grow in their knowledge and understanding of womanist hermeneutics. We've teamed up with the Candler Foundry to present this 6-part series on womanist discourse, aimed to give you an inside look into the scholarship of our amazing faculty and inspire you to join us in this work of liberation.
Reverend Allison Henderson-Brooks is the Assistant Dean of Students at Candler School of Theology. Reverend Allison is a proud graduate of Atlanta's historic Spelman College, where she earned a bachelor's degree in English literature in 2008. In May of 2019, she received her Master of Divinity degree from Candler School of Theology at Emory University. Reverend Allison Henderson-Brooks is the 25th senior pastor and the first woman pastor of the historic Hill First Baptist Church. Reverend Henderson-Brooks is passionate about social justice, community outreach, scholastic achievement, and the inclusion of children, youth, and young adults in the rhythm of daily church life. And now it's time for the episode. Dean Henderson-Brooks, welcome to Candler in Conversation.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I'm excited to talk to you. You have a wonderful way, whether it's through humor or just being willing to see people or to find something to pull out of people. You're willing to be that person to say. So serving as dean to students it's just such a role, such a way. I see the way when you're just walking through Candler, you'll stop and say, "Hi, how are you? How are you?" And I always wonder, how do you have the energy to do it all?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is who I am. And so, many people know that I worked in hospitality for 10 years, but hospitality is actually my towering spiritual gift. And so it's so funny when I was, working in hotels, they would say, "You missed your calling. You should be a pastor." And I was like, I actually preach on the side, and now, in the academy, it's like, wow, it is really who I am. Yeah. And I believe in, seeing people. And using my voice to affirm, because it's just really who I am is authentically who I am. Yeah. And it shows. It matters.
It shows.
Yes, it matters.
It shows. I love that you said people would tell you, "Oh, you should be a preacher," and you're like, "No, I am." There's just parts of me that you can't see. There's just parts of me that you can't see. So we're thinking about the womanist lens. And the totality of who Reverend almost Dr. Allison Henderson-Brooks is.
Yeah.
How has the womanist lens helped you to become who you are?
Absolutely. It prioritizes the beauty in intersectional identities. It also amplifies this truth about authenticity, showing up as you are in the moment with all that you carry and, right, this ancestral, not just framework, but support and strength is going with you and ahead of you to ensure that it lands. And so it's interesting you asked that question. As a graduate of Spelman College, being in the Women's Studies program with Dr. Beverly Goss-Sheftall, it started bubbling back then in undergrad, right? And, coming to seminary and sitting in systematics. And when we got to the womanist portion, Dr. Erskine was like, "Hold on. We're going to hear from Dr. Jacqueline Grant. And we're going to hear from Dr. Riggs. And we're going to beam in Dr. Towns, right? To hear from them." And now in my last semester in this inaugural womanist cohort, to have sat under Dr. Teresa Fry Brown, Dr. Renita Weems, to have heard from Dr. Emily Towns, Dr. Courtney V. Buggs, Dr. Camila Hallshaw. It absolutely transported me back to freshman year at Spelman College. And so this cohort, this womanist work in this D-Min program was a reminder that the womanist was always percolating within me.
Yeah.
And now I can stand flat-footedly with authority and integrity to say that I am a womanist, right? And that's the beauty of womanism. No one can name you for you. It is your voice, right? It is your conviction that says I am a womanist. And so when I connect the dots and draw the bridge from undergrad to where I am now, the womanist in me has always been developed, but now I can articulate it for myself.
You can name
and
it.
I live with those womanist tenets every day, no matter where I am, particularly in my preaching.
And it shows. Speaking of your preaching.
Okay.
I have to bring up Alfred Street.
Woo.
I have to bring up that sermon was phenomenal.
Wow.
It was needed. I go back and watch it and it brings me joy. How did you learn to persist?
Well, let's go back to the context of that sermon, right? And sort of the how we got there. I knew that it was Women's History Month, and it's Alfred Street. Like it's Alfred Street. You know that there are going to be anywhere between 16,000 and 30,000 folk that are watching this live, right? Coming behind, right, some of the great notables. I'm third in the lineup of four. And about a month prior, one of my D-Min assignments was to use Mitzi Smith's book. Matter of fact, Dean Frank Brown was our professor for that cohort. And she just listed named, right, so many of these common cultural things that are happening. You had to pick two and write a sermon about it. And when I thought about the moment, and I thought about if this is my first time on this stage, if it's my last time, it's going to be a strong stand. And so when I started thinking about it, and for those of us who preach, you know, you don't need to preach one sermon one time, right? How do we expand on that? But as I finished the course and as I was writing the sermon, I said, this is the sermon that I know I'm supposed to preach. And at that point, it's doing what I always do. Right? But also bringing in those voices. Because it's difficult to go in that kind of context and say, Jesus, we're going to pull your coattails here, right? Risky business. You know, but the womanist, the authority of standing in your womanist interpretive lens matters. Dr. Renita Williams, she taught us womanist biblical interpretation. She said, it's up to you to flip the text in a way that people will listen without being turned off. And if they're turned off, at least they've heard. And so what's in front of the text? What's behind the text? What's underneath the text? What's above the text? And what's sitting right beside the text are the questions that I'm always asking. And that sermon, in many respects, exemplified that. In the way, right? We're going to pull out all of these things. And thanks be to God for the Holy Ghost. And, you know, and thanks be to God for how it landed. It's interesting you say that. There have been so many people across the country that have called to ask, what were you thinking when you were writing that sermon?
And even the way that you got us there, like to the point of she persisted, a checkmate. You started talking about your son, and it was just lovely to hear about the totality, like, of who you are. And then you get to the point of the conversation with Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman, and I've never heard it preached in the way that you referenced in that moment when you specifically said that she had to go back to Jesus again. And a lot of times when we hear Jesus, we immediately think liberation, and we just know that Jesus is present. But you called out the real part of the text where even Jesus had privilege in that moment.
Linguistic othering is there. It's there. And so I am grateful how a womanist hermeneutic and a womanist biblical interpretation sharpens my insight and sight into the text in a different kind of way. It was a persisting for me as well. And the end of that sermon, I remember it was, Lord, do it. That was my prayer. That was my prayer as I am sitting in the hotel room, still don't have a close. You know what I mean? Like, this is about to, Lord, do it.
Yeah.
And I tell, some folks in my circle, it was the prayer that released me to say, no, you're going to stand. We're not editing. You've already edited. It's go time.
Yeah.
Lord, do it.
Yeah.
And the beauty in that is after the service, after the cameras had gone down, there were a line of about 85 people who waited and persisted to come to the altar and to tell me and literally bring with them in their prayers, which was the essence of the message.
Yes.
Their concerns about their children.
Wow.
And I'll never forget it. But that was the outward manifestation of what has been percolating and being groomed.
Yeah.
Right. And sharpened.
Yes.
From not just my childhood, but single-handedly from the work that we've been able to do in the Womanist cohort.
Yeah.
The inaugural Womanist cohort in the country.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a beautiful moment.
Wow.
So I want to touch a little bit on your childhood.
Let's do it.
So you did say in the sermon, you were talking about your mom, and you said when people try to count you out, you tell them that you can't count.
You just counted wrong.
And everyone that I've interviewed so far, when we talk about womanism, we have to talk about childhood.
Absolutely.
And everyone was able to describe how their mothers, their grandmothers, their ancestors have poured into them to help them become who they are. So who is that for you? And just tell us about that.
Yeah. So definitely my mother, who's in sainted memory, and my grandmother. My grandmother, in many respects, though informally, was the first embodiment of what it means to be a woman preacher. She said it how she felt it. She read the book. She and 3 other women pressed to become the first women trustees of our church.
Wow.
Right? I grew up in listening to Reverend Dr. Howard William Creasy Sr. Been preaching, if you will, since a toddler, and always heard him telling my father and my mother, we've got to watch.
Yeah.
We got to watch her. You know what I mean? We've got to watch her do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at 15, he said, okay, wear a black suit, put on a white shirt, and always have your Bible and be ready. I learned the beginnings of exegesis at 15, but it was my grandmother's constant refrain, say so. The refrain of all these women my dissertation is actually, in my acknowledgments, I call all of them, Mother Geneva Dorsey, who would always say it good now. Say it good. My mother's was stand tall.
Yeah.
We are with you. And so it's those voices that said, just keep on going. We're with you.
Yeah.
My mother, before she passed, she actually introduced me, at a women's function. And she said, I could go on and on to tell you about who she is. But when you hear her preach, that will be a greater testament to who she is and who she is in God than anything that I could ever say. I remember that very vaguely. 2 months later, she passed. And so it's the childhood of the women who pushed, who prayed, who showed up. My mother and my grandmother who were just look like where you're going, act like where you are, and handle your business, right? Those womanist ways and words of wisdom still today spawn me on. Yeah. They still today spawn me on. So
I love that.
Yeah. It's started from the beginning. From the beginning. Mrs. Scott at the Tabernacle School in Augusta, Georgia, who it's, no, you're going to do the prayer and the welcome. By memory, and so I remember all of, and I remember them and I carry them with me. As I'm pastoring now, the very first time we were in the pool, the first 8 persons that I baptized, they were all little girls. And to see the joy and the excitement and the recognition of what that moment meant, to say, I've never seen a woman in the pulpit. What does that mean?
Yeah.
It matters in so many ways. And so I know that I am just a conduit for what God has always been doing. Yeah. And as we look at the changes in theological education and in the changes in the Black church, that women are rising to prominent places. And in our churches, it's the pulpit. Right. It's the presidents of national conventions. Yes. Right. It lets us know that this is a right time and a right time for us to understand the utility of a womanist interpretive hermeneutic. Yeah. Because I think it all points back to that. And even if you can't articulate what it is, you've observed it, you've seen it, and you've been a beneficiary of it. Yes. And what is left now to do is for us to own it and to name it. Yes. So, yes. Yeah. I want to publicly say congratulations on being the first woman senior pastor of the historic Hill First Baptist Church. Yeah. Take us back to the moment, and I'm just gonna say it was a call. I don't know. Call. Call. 10:43 a.m. Yes. August the 1st. What was going through your mind? What a mighty God we serve. True story. I never applied to Hill First Baptist Church. In good Baptist fashion, the elders in the community said my name. Elder men in the community said my name. Chairman of the deacon board, because he revered and respected some of the older men that said my name, reached out. Yeah. Our bylaws say that women cannot be senior pastor. Wow. Yeah. We're still in the American South, right? Yeah. Our church is the oldest Black Baptist church in North Georgia. Everyone on the search committee, with the exception of 2 women, are lifelong members of the church. And they said to me, when we went on YouTube, I was like, bless the Lord for YouTube. And everyone says the same thing about you. And when we heard you preach in our pulpit, true story, we thought back to our mothers and how strong they were in the church. 2 of them had mothers who had a calling that they could not acknowledge. Wow. And they're all in their 80s. All of these men are in their 80s to say, it is evident that you are the one that God sent to us. And one of them said, I heard my mother clearly say, you got to be on the right side of this. And literally, so they called and we had a conversation. The only Sunday I had available on my calendar was 8/28/2022. Yeah. Romans 8:20. And all things work together for the good of those. Only available sermon. Preached. After I preached, chairman of trustee board, deacon board, said, would you consider putting in a formal application to become our pastor? And I said, my goodness, right? My childhood pastor, and when I went through the history books, preached at that church, right? Kings, right? Daddy King and King Jr. preached at the church. It was the Freedom Church in North Georgia. It was the stopping point where folks who were coming to Atlanta would stop. Major. Just major, right? Still the original hardwoods that were laid by the skilled hands of emancipated enslaved persons in 1857. And it's still standing. And so it's all God. It is all God. And not just me, but that story has been replicated across the country with Danielle Brown. And, at Shiloh, Plainfield, that's right. Meg Church, Dr. Jacqueline Thompson. And the list goes on and on. Dr. Donna Owusu and Sa in New Jersey. Dr. Cynthia Hale. Dr. Cynthia Hale years ago, right? Particularly in the Black Baptist Church. And New Jersey is absolutely leading the way. So Danielle Brown, Donna Owusu and Sa, Janelle York, Nicole Drakeford, Tisha Dixon Williams. You come on down to Anika Wilson Brown in D.C. The Eastern Shore is showing up in so many places. Leslie, Francisco McClendon, and it just keeps going on. Just this week alone, Reverend Sierra Smith Bond in Richmond, Virginia, who will be installed by Reverend Goulchamp, right? And so it's happening. And so it requires us to respond.
Yes.
To respond.
Yes.
Yeah. Particularly, again, with specificity in the Baptist church, the Black Baptist church.
In the words of Reverend Dr. Gina Stewart, at your installation, breakthrough will come.
Breakthrough will come. Keep on digging.
Yeah.
Keep on digging. And she has installed half of us.
Wow.
That's right. From Reverend Dr. Gina Thompson all the way on. And, when we think about 27 years ago, what it meant for her to grow up in the church of Christ Missionary Baptist Church, pastor has a heart attack. Church votes you in. But it's pastoring the people that you know.
Yeah.
And how that trajectory has been catapulted into our recent times speaks to why a womanist biblical interpretation and womanist preaching and womanist practitioners.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Who embody womanism,
Yes.
why it matters.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a continual digging. She said at Jacqueline Thompson's installation, and I have it on my wall, she says, every now and again, when you're in the right place and when you are prepared, God will bust a move on your behalf so that God will get the glory and you will understand that God did not forget about you, right? God is busting moves. God is busting moves. So, yeah.
That was good to the baby. He's kicking.
Well, amen.
That was good to him.
Yeah. It's an incredible time to be in the academy when the theological landscape is changing and more women are saying, I belong here and seeking out the tools, right,
Yes.
to live into their calling. It's an incredible time to see the trajectory. And in this way, across the country of women assuming prominent roles in denominations and in denominational offices and in the local church and in nonprofits, right? And all of the things that we do so well are being amplified on a national stage. And it points back to preparation. Let's be clear.
In the right place.
In the right place. And our ethic of anyhow and anywhere that I'll show up, right? Dr. Lisa Thompson is one of my favorite, Black liturgics. Her books, Preaching as an Outsider and Preaching as Ingenuity, the ways in which we show up and preach anyhow, right? With this hermeneutic of suspicion and how we take that to use subversive rhetoric, right? To get the point across and to do the work, is just, it's a similar work. When you think about the work that Melanie Jones is doing with her concept of millennial womanism, right? And, all of the folks that are our age, they're 40 and under, are coming in to say, I will curate my own space.
Yes.
And let that be sufficient as well, right?
Yes.
And so, echo womanism, Melanie Harris's seminal work about the rootedness of earth and planting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's so much amazing work.
Yes.
That is coming out that makes me excited because now there are continued tools.
Yes.
That women can grapple and grasp on to ground them in the work that they know their souls must have, right? To quote Cannon.
Yeah.
I love and will forever love the courageous boldness of the late Dr. Cannon and Dolores Williams and Jacqueline Grant, who raised their voices in classrooms and challenged Cone. And got Cone to change Cone's mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To then say, I've done my work. This is great. You all take it. And how waves of womanism continues to spawn because there is creativity.
Yes.
And there is an abundance.
Yes.
For you to carve it out.
Yes.
Be true to who you are and add to the discourse.
Yes.
And so in some way, I am hopeful that not just my presence, not just my preaching, not just the work that I do here as the Dean of Students, but also the work that I am writing in this cohort will add to the discourse so that a one-liner or a concept might live into perpetuity for someone that is coming around and up and in the same, womanist vein, 20, 30 years from now, will write it down and get inspired when they read it.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah,
and it will.
Yeah, it's a gift. It is a gift to not just work with Dr. Phillips and Dr. Dubé, who was mentioned in that text, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Bringing in the voices, Dean Teresa Fry Brown. I remember at Spelman reading her Weary Throats and New Songs.
Oh,
and
so good.
My senior year in the Women's Studies program, getting a hold to Can a Sister Get a Little Help? And working and learning, not just as a former professor, but now as a colleague, and to see the consistency of her womanist ways and, her masterful explaining and embodying of a womanist ethic. It's
unapologetic embodiment.
Yeah, it's unapologetic embodiment. And, Dr. Kalia Williams' work about dancing as embodiment is, it's the body, you know. And so, womanism centers the body, your own lived experiences. And so it not only gives you permission, but it gives you, again, authority to stand in your truth of who you really are.
Yeah.
No matter where you are.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible stuff.
I want to touch on the where. Now, this question is going to bleed into the chaplaincy track a little bit.
Okay.
But you were at Lee Arundel State Prison.
That's right.
Preaching to women who are currently incarcerated.
That's right.
And Susan Bishop told me multiple times, oh, Allison is such a blessing to us. We love her so much. The women love her.
Wow.
And so how do you preach liberation to women that are physically, and sometimes they would even express from my time there through Con Ed, mentally in bondage?
That's right. True story, and I will never forget her as long as there's breath in my body. I preached a sermon there. It was right after Mother's Day. The majority of the folks are, that was a great sermon. It's one woman. All it takes is one. Katakiano Hayes. She said to me, your sermon was BS, verbatim. Well, she says, because it doesn't apply to me. And she goes on, that was the very first time that she shared her story, white collar job, all these different things. Did not expect it to be her. I don't see myself in this text. That right there for me changed it.
Yeah.
It is not about the applause. It is not about standing in our own ability. But it is about making the message portable and palatable to all who hear. And every Sunday that I preach, when I am in my preparation, I go back to Lee Arundel State Prison. Because the majority of my work was with women who were incarcerated for life sentences with no parole. And so Hayes, I think about Hayes all the time. Like, I don't see myself in this text. And so how do I ensure that wherever I am, there is something in the text that you can self-identify with?
Yeah.
So that the message can come through. Every Monday, 10:18 a.m., every Monday I'd go to B Unit, B1. And there was an older woman, Miss Peggy Moss. We would pray together every Monday. She had served almost 30-something years, life without parole. Bishop called me to tell me, she said, Miss Moss said, you got to call Chap, because we were praying that if I ever got out of here, that I would have a place to go. And she said, I didn't understand why she was asking me to pray that prayer. Lo and behold, during COVID, when the state of Georgia did not have enough folks to look after the folks that were incarcerated, they released 1,000 women. Now, that ought to have us ask the question, if y'all can be released because there's no one to work,
right?
Why am I in here in the first place? But nevertheless, Ms. Moss was released, and the same son that we prayed for every Monday, same provisions that we believed would be available if she was ever released, were available, and she's still alive and well. We keep in contact. She's in Shepherdsville, Kentucky. Wow. And so to see what could happen, and she says, you made me believe after 30-something years of being in here with no choice, that with God all things are possible.
Wow.
And I take that to heart because it matters.
Yeah.
It matters. The gospel is plausible, right, when everything is going all right. But it is our job to make sure the gospel is applicable when the tables are turned and we find ourselves in liminal spaces, right? And our lives are on the line.
Yes.
The gospel has to matter.
Yeah.
And so I am forever changed by the work that God allowed me to experience, being at Lee Arendelle State Prison. And I still go.
Yes.
I still go. So yeah, it matters.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Now you've already shared wonderful tips. So I'm still gonna ask, because we like to be practical. We like people to not only be inspired, but if you could give 3 tips, 3 things that someone listening right now can do to either, maybe they're already a womanist.
Sure.
To either delve deeper into the work.
Yeah.
Or get started.
Yeah. Leaders are learners, right? And so for those that feel called to this womanist track, or to those who already know it will sharpen the tools in your tool belt. It is unquestionable that Candler School of Theology has the best and the brightest scholars around the world.
Yes.
Right. And so to have the opportunity to not just read the book and quote the nugget, but to literally sit at the beautiful feet of a Dean Teresa Fry Brown, of a Dr. Musa Dube, Dr. Nicole Phillips, Dr. Kalia Williams, and understand womanism and see it embodied matters. It matters greatly. And so start somewhere. It wasn't until the end of my second intensive that Dr. Buggs asked the question, so who among us are womanist? And the overwhelming majority of our colleagues said, I'm still discerning. I don't know. But after the second cohort, I am a womanist, right? Yeah. And so start somewhere. Launch out into the deep. You don't know what you don't know. And you don't know what you do know until you put it in context. Secondly, in this ever-evolving landscape, the more tools in your tool belt that you have will better prepare you for what is and what is to come, right? And then 3, this is graduate work. And so there should be some basement level of understanding that you have about what potentially your participation in this cohort will have, and what it's going to require from you, right? Womanism requires something from you. And so you have to be willing to open up your mouth. You have to be willing to show up authentically. You have to be willing to see things that you hadn't always seen, and ask the questions that perhaps you're not always ready to ask.
Yes.
But they're there.
Yes.
Right? That's Dr. Renita Williams talked about that. I mean, she would pull some of those obscure passages from the text and say, preach this. But it's that sharpened ability to preach any text, because whatever your hermeneutical key is going to show up.
No matter what the text
comes, and how we prioritize our lived experience as a source.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So preparation, just a basic understanding of the course and the course's material that you will engage in and what will be required of you in terms of your engagement. And I would say an insatiable desire to be better. An insatiable desire to be better. Yeah. You can't do biblical interpretation without understanding. You should not do.
Yeah.
Right. A womanist hermeneutic, ethics. We talk about what is good and what is the goal. What is responsible. What is a fitting response then a womanist hermeneutic offers us the ability to say, what is a fitting response?
Yes.
Right? To say we love God with all of our heart, all of our souls, and all of our minds, and yet willfully and willingly reject.
Yes.
Womanist ethics, womanist preaching, right? Means that we are willingly leaving out some folks that have historically gone unseen on purpose. And then, what we say for that?
Yeah.
And how then will we be held accountable for that?
Yes.
You know, when you see women in the, young girls start asking the inquisitive questions.
Yes.
What about me? Then, we have to have a response for that. So yeah, it's a well-rounding, an opportunity to be well-rounded.
Yes.
To have all of the tools you need, to serve this present age as our calling to fulfill.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so wise to start with saying, just start.
To start.
Because as you brought up Dr. Courtney Buggs, she wrote my recommendation for the MDiv program at Candler.
Yeah.
I was a bio major at Spelman who knew that she was going to go in another direction. And it was my first religion class at Spelman was hers.
Wow.
And when I went to her to talk to her, I said, Dr. Buggs, I don't have a background in this. I just feel like God is calling me to Candler and I can't really explain why. And I knew she would shut me down. I was like, I knew it was, and she simply said,
in a low voice.
Yes. In
a low voice.
She was like, if you feel the call, be obedient to it.
Yeah.
And you did the work in this class, I will write you a wonderful letter. And she did.
Yeah. Yeah. I took intro to preaching, with Dr. Buggs. Yeah. And she actually was our first cohort about the foundations of womanist theology. Yeah. Yeah.
Circle moment.
Yeah. Candler alumni. You know? But that's the beauty of intersectional identities. You're a bio major, right? Dr. Buggs, 20-year veteran.
Yes.
Fighter pilot.
Pilot. I was a pilot,
you know
right?
what I mean? Dancer.
Yeah.
Attorney. Speech pathologist. We come with all of these things, and it allows us to bring our full selves. Right? It's not a bivocation, it's a co-vocation.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
It's always interweaving.
Yes.
When you think about folks that are engineers, they will read the text from that lens and it will blow your mind.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it's all of that.
Yes.
It's all of that. It's all of that. A public health professional, they will look at that text, and say, oh wow. To extract some of the nuggets that we just,
that we would miss.
We're going to miss.
Yeah.
That's right. Old Testament scholar, New Testament scholar, a womanist ethicist. Right? You're going to see that thing differently.
And Candler has space for all of the.
And there is space. There's room.
Yes.
There's always room. And a womanist hermeneutic says, if there's not room, then I'll make a way. You know what I mean? I'll make a way. And I will create room. Prayerfully.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
May we all go on to create room.
Yeah. May we all go on to create room.
Thank you.
Yeah. Listen.
And I know everyone listening is also saying thank you.
Oh, no. Listen, it's my joy. It is my honor. But I am forever grateful to have just started when the flyer came out announcing this inaugural cohort, and it had all of the heavies.
Yes.
Right? All of the works of the women, that I have read and heard about, from my early formation at Spelman.
Yes.
To sit at their feet and to learn.
Yes.
And to bring all of that with me in as preparation for what it means to now pastor.
Yes.
And to preach every Sunday. Bringing all of that with me, for God's glory, for the community's good, and for my gain and my growth.
Yes.
Right? In this field, it's a blessing. And so, just start. Just Start. You will not be disappointed. And so it's a gift. Mm-hmm. And I would say we are grateful that God has preserved their lives and their scholarship so that they can still teach. They can still teach. They can still witness. They can still grow. And so just start.
Just start.
Just start.
Start somewhere.
Just start somewhere. And thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to dialogue today. Yes. I am honored and I'm humble. And so may the work that we both continue to do continue to speak for us.
Amen. Yeah, that was a benediction. We will close.
All right. Thank you so much.